Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova. That was very kind. Thank you, Rabbi Bauman, for this opportunity and for your friendship and generosity, your patience in studying with me and suggesting texts for me to look at and to learn from. I'm really humbled and honored by this opportunity to speak with you all tonight, in particular during these days of awe, during this important moment in the Jewish calendar. As we think about Teshuvah and our return to our community, to ourselves, and to God. And I thought I would begin by suggesting that we focus our hearts and our minds on the people in Florida and the Carolinas who have endured, and continue to endure Ian. We shouldn't forget those in Cuba, those in Puerto Rico who have also endured storms recently and in the past few years. And while you can't say that any one storm is the result of some aspect of climate change, the science is too complex. As we watched Ian approach, it reminded us of Hurricanes Laura and Ida, as these Category 3 storms started to get stronger and move more quickly as they approached land. And unfortunately, climate science has suggested that this would occur, that these storms will get bigger and faster and less predictable because of the temperatures of our oceans and the increased amount of moisture in the air. So our thoughts are with everyone who is enduring that difficulty as we think about what it is that we can do as we focus our minds and our hearts. And I'm not going to get into a long discussion of climate science. There's a part of this that's somewhat simple physics. We have this atmosphere, and we're putting more carbon dioxide into it, and so things are getting warmer. And that creates this cascading impact of bad consequences. Our oceans become more acidic. The temperatures rise, our polar ice caps melt, seas rise, and lots of bad things continue to happen. When we see a hurricane like the ones that we're enduring right now, that storm surge has a higher baseline elevation with which to cause so much pain. And this is unfortunately so close to home in a place like Louisiana, where we live with this day in and day out. We live in an existential crisis. We're losing a football field of land every 100 minutes. So to put that in perspective, by the time you were getting ready to come here tonight, and you enjoy this service, and maybe a little bit of the oneg, and by the time you get home, a football field of our wetlands just disappeared. It's an existential crisis. Since 1932, we've lost a landmass about the size of the state of Delaware. There are nations that have gone to war to protect that much territory. And so it is certainly an environmental disaster, but during this time of Teshuvah, we should also pay attention to the moral disaster that this represents. We know that in communities like ours, the people who suffer from these moments and from climate change generally are the ones who are already most vulnerable. There's a disproportionate impact on those who are most vulnerable. We know that living in New Orleans. We know that in this part of the Gulf South. That the poorest among us are those who are least able to prepare for and respond to these events. Where are you going to go? Do you have a car? Do you have dollars in your pocket to get a hotel room for yourself and for your family? We know that this is more than an environmental disaster. The World Health Organization has said that climate change is the single greatest threat to humanity. Single greatest threat to humanity. So this might sound a little grim. It is. So in these moments, we turn to the words of the great sage Woody Allen, who said, quote, "More than any other time in our history, mankind faces a crossroads. One path leads to despair and utter hopelessness, the other to total extinction. Let us pray that we have the wisdom to choose correctly." So we do face some really big challenges, and I think we should feel a healthy sense of anxiety about it all. We need to act quickly. We need to act smartly. And I think we should also celebrate some of the good things that are happening in this space. Last year, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed and was signed into law contained $50 billion for climate resilience. That's without question the largest investment we've ever seen. The unfortunately named Inflation Reduction Act is the most important piece of climate legislation that we've ever passed in this country. These are good things. The state of Louisiana has a 50-year, $50 billion coastal master plan that's based on science, not politics. And last year in our state, we passed and approved the first climate adaptation plan, the first in the Deep South. These are all good things that I think we should be hopeful around. And as the rabbi said, I have this great honor. I get to lead this nonprofit organization called the Water Institute of the Gulf, and our job is to bring science to help inform our decision-making about what we should do in the face of climate change. I have the great privilege of working with academics and practitioners from Tulane and universities all across the state and beyond. And our work is all about this idea that if we can infuse science into our decision-making, instead of environmental injustice being perpetuated, maybe we can become a little bit more just. Our group was formed after Hurricane Katrina with this recognition that we needed to help Louisiana, help ourselves continue to live here and enjoy this place, and that we could take the knowledge that we've acquired and to take it to other communities that need our help. So after Hurricane Harvey, we went to Houston. We've been to Charleston, South Carolina, and helped that community, and those lessons will be put to the test tonight. We've been to Mobile and to Jacksonville and helping the Commonwealth of Virginia prepare. So these are things that we find, at least that I find, very encouraging. So as Jews living on the front lines of climate change, living day in and day out with this threat, what are we supposed to do? Where does this challenge rank in the order of all the things that we have to work on together? My wife Dana and I, as the rabbi said, we're the proud parents of two young boys who I hope are not watching but are going to sleep right now. Please go to sleep. We love you very much. And because they're 5, 2, going on 20, we've been thinking a lot about what does it mean to be Jewish and how do you impart that meaning to the next generation, to our children. And in our house, we do a lot of storytelling. We read a lot of books and tell lots of stories. And I think Judaism is so rich in how we convey wisdom through stories. And there's this wonderful story that maybe you've heard in the Midrash in the Babylonian Talmud. And it's about a man walking down the path, and he sees this old man planting a carob tree. And the guy says to him, "Old man, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm planting a carob tree." The guy says, "Well, you know how long it takes for a carob tree to grow and to bear fruit?" And the old man says, "Yeah, about 70 years. And the guy says to him, "No disrespect, but do you think you're going to make it to see this carob tree grow and to bear fruit?" And the old man says, "I don't think I will, but I grew up in an area where there were carob trees and they bore fruit, and so it only makes sense to me that I would plant some for the next generations." And this wisdom, I think, really resonates with us as Jews. We are an intergenerational people. We say Lador Vador, from generation to generation. And we see this concept in Torah throughout, including in the Parsha that we read on Rosh Hashanah, that we'll look at again in Yom Kippur, Deuteronomy 29, where it's written, "I am making this covenant not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us this day before the Lord our God, and with those who are not here with us this day." So in other words, we have a responsibility to the past and also to the future generations that will come after us. And if we don't act today, one thing that we know is that the check, the bill for our inaction, will come due to the next generation. What's it going to cost to protect Miami? How much are we going to spend to protect New York City, Boston? Where is Lake Charles, Homa, our beloved New Orleans? Where do we fit on that priority list? If we're not thinking about these issues now, who will and when? In thinking about these questions and studying with Rabbi, I came across the concept of Shemitah. Shemitah is this idea in Judaism that we take a sabbatical year for the land, for the earth. Every 6 years, at the end of that 6th year, we stop. We don't plant. We let the land lie fallow. And science has proven that this 1,000-year tradition, that there's really something to it. This past year, 5782, was a Shemitah year, and now we go back into the first of the 6 years. And for me, this idea has really pointed to, as I've thought about what to talk about related to climate change, this idea of collective action. It only works if we're all doing it together. The way that a UCLA climate expert named Edward Parson put it, he said, quote, "There are some limited ways that individual behavior can change and make a non-trivial difference. But climate change is a problem of the aggregate, the emissions of human activities from 7.5 billion people in the world. The way that climate activist Bill McKinnon put it, a bit more straightforwardly perhaps, is he said, we're past the point where climate math is going to be made to work one vegan dinner at a time, one Tesla at a time, or one anything at a time. And there's a lot of truth in that. And what that doesn't mean is that we should stop recycling or not compost or don't drive that electric car. We should do all of that and more. But I think the point of this commentary and the point of Shemitah is that while individual actions are necessary, they're not sufficient. We have to act together. We must take collective action, and that occurs at every level. In the city of New Orleans, unfortunately, we recycle about 3.1% of what could be recycled. We got to do better. We need to do a better job of integrating nature into the way we live with water. At the state level, we're going to have a gubernatorial election, and we need whoever's the next governor for he or she to endorse our coastal master plan, for that next governor to take on the climate action plan and implement it. And at the federal level, we need to ensure that our elected officials move faster, invest more in the energy transition. We're not doing it quickly enough. And in the international level, we need to meet our commitments, continue making them, and help other nations get there. We can do this. We can do this if we all do it together, if we organize, and we advocate around collective action. We also receive this inspiration, I think, in Torah, another passage that we have read in Rosh Hashanah, we'll read again, the rabbi mentioned last week, and I think it bears repeating at least in part here. Now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It's not up in the heavens, nor is it beyond the sea. No, the word is very near you. It's in your mouth and in your heart, so you may obey it. I hope that in this new year that we can work together, that this teshuvah is not in the heavens or in the seas or in some boardroom in an international diplomatic meeting. It's here with us. The opportunity is here now. All those children who were on the bima earlier, they need us to act. This year, I have the great privilege of working with Erica Zucker to co-chair Touro's social action campaign, our social action committee, and I'm confident with Erica's inspired leadership, we're going to do a lot of good stuff together, and I hope that climate change and working on these issues can be part of that. Our synagogue has such a proud tradition of teshuvah, of returning and repairing, and I hope that I will have the opportunity to work with you and work with so many others as we think about how we can make our mark on the massive change that needs to occur. I thank you very, very much for the opportunity to share a few words with you tonight, and I hope that we'll all have a blessed and sweet new year. Shabbat Shalom and Lashana Tova.